Let me give another way of, deepening my relationship with God. And now this is kind of going beyond east and west. And one of the ways I like to look at it is using prayer to deepen my relationship with God and to make my God bigger and to see that I also become bigger in my own self-concept. See, what is prayer? Prayer, first of all, is a means, not an end in itself. Prayer is a means to deepen my union and communion with the divine. Today I would say prayer is to expand my experience of God. Prayer is a means to make my God bigger and bigger and bigger. See, Thomas Aquinas tells us that God is always bigger than what we can ever think about God. God is always bigger. So if I have an experience of God, God is bigger than that. If I have an idea of God, God is bigger than that idea. You know, if I have learned something about God, there's always more. So God is always bigger than my than whatever I think about or the way I relate with God at any given moment. So prayer is a means to expand my concept, my experience, to make my God bigger and greater. That's the purpose of prayer. How do I do that? There are three different ways of looking at it. The first way is when I begin, as the question that you were asking, here, this is where I am, what do I do next? What do I do next? So when I begin my relationship with God, I begin to talk to God and God listens. So I talk and God listens. This is that small God. I talk and God listens. So I need something, God will answer my prayer. If I need help, I turn to God. This is that little God who is giving me things. And I feel little. Now my relationship with God grows bigger and my God becomes a little bigger. Now what happens? God talks to me and I listen. So, I feel bigger because I feel, oh my God, God has time to say something to me. God considers me worthwhile. That God has something to tell me. So this God becomes bigger and I feel also bigger. So my relationship with God and my prayer life grows in allowing God to talk to me and I listen. Now my relationship with God grows even bigger and greater. Then I listen and God listens. We're both listening. See, God has grown bigger and I have grown bigger in my relationship with God. So it is, I talk, God listens. I listen, God talks. I listen, God listens. The final stage is, no one talks, no one listens, there's silence. Remember we talked about mysticism of silence. The mysticism of silence is, no words can communicate myself with this big God. No words can communicate this big God to me. No signs and symbols, nothing I can do can express how I feel about this big God and how this big God feels about me. Okay? All that I can do is, in silence, there is this deep, deep, deep communication of this great, big, wonderful God and me getting immersed and lost in this God who is so big. So prayer, I begin by talking, God listens. I listen, God talks. I listen, God listens. No one listens, no one talks. It's in silence. When our relationship with God gets bigger, gets deeper, and God becomes a little bigger, then I need to do more than words to express my relationship with God. I want to do something for God to show God I love God more than words. Let me give you my own example. When I was in my training in the third or fourth year, there was one of my companions fell sick. And the superior told me, he says, Paul, take care of him. I said, oh, he was in the hospital. And so every morning, soon after breakfast, I would be there on my bicycle to go and take care of him. After lunch, as soon as lunch was over, rather than recreation or or spending time for myself, back on the bicycle, back onto the hospital. My games time, my free time was all with him, taking care of him. The day that he was going in for a surgery, the infirmarian couldn't be there. So I went into the operating room over there, just to be with him so that he knew there was somebody with him. And the doctors and the nurses said, "Have you been here before?" I said, "No." I said, "If anything happens to you, we cannot take care of you because, we'll be busy with him." So I said, "Sure." So as soon as they cut him open, of course, when I saw that blood, I turned towards the wall, waited there till everything was over. But I went through all of that. When he came back to the community, he began to spread all kinds of stories negative about me. That I felt that I was rash judged, misunderstood. I felt this tremendous rejection. But of course, at that time, I was feeling so wonderful because I said, "God, and I'm sure there will be a great reward waiting for me when I die and I show up." Of course, there's no reward waiting for me. Why? Now when I look back, why did the fellow reject me? Because at that time, I loved myself only that much. And Jesus said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Since I loved myself only that much, I could love him only that much. What about all the other things that I did for him? Those were acts of love. That was not love. And acts of love are used to prove to myself what a good person I am. Acts of love is to prove to the rest of the world what a wonderful person I am. Acts of love is to use the other person to gain merit in heaven. And so acts of love, when we use people that way, only deserve misunderstanding, rash judgment, and what I got. And there'll be no reward waiting for me in heaven. So even in my relationship with God, I need to be able to, my expressions, my signs and symbols need to be an expression and to relate with the depth of the love of my relationship for God. Otherwise, it will hurt. Now when love grows deeper and God becomes bigger, what can you do for God that will please God? Nothing. Because this God is now big. See, when God was little, yes, you could do things to make God happy. You could help somebody else to keep God, to whatever, to be able to help God, whatever. Now this God has become bigger. You can do nothing to help this God. And so what you do is, your prayer becomes a prayer of presence. A prayer of presence. So I look at God and God looks at me. And that's all that matters. That's all that counts. Now this God is that big God. You can say nothing to this big God. You can do nothing to this big God. All that you can do is just be present. Now in our own personal lives, whenever something wonderful happens, whenever something kind of painful happens, the way we communicate that is just by being present. Just by being present. Imagine if one of your loved ones is dying. You can say nothing, you can do nothing, but you're fully present, you're fully focused on that person. And in that presence and in that focus, you're communicating in a very deep way, where words don't come in the way and signs and symbols don't come in the way. It is just you and your beloved, you and the person that you love. So in my relationship with God, there are times when, I can say nothing, I can do nothing, I'm just there in the presence of God. Because my God has become bigger.